Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be going through a beat that I made for the new Doughboy album, and with the power of editing, you shall see the album cover here. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. First of all, we got ourselves a preset from Analog 5 called the American Classic Piano. You know, you gotta get some keys in there. And this is the pattern I came up with. It may look a bit complex, however, it's essentially very simple. Came up with these root notes at first, just copy and pasted the F down an octave, and then when I copy and pasted it again, it's literally just 5 semitones lower. And then the one thing I did was, as you guys can see from here and here, I cut off a bit of the last note just so I can create a bit of tension when you hear the whole thing. Next part of this piano melody, I repeated this every one bar, and I made use of notes that were a semitone apart within the scale. Gives a lot of tension, gives a lot more of a dark feel, and of course you want to stick to repeating notes, so that's what helps to give it that nice doughboy feel. And again, last but not least, making use of those semitone apart notes in the higher octave to create a nice little top line in the back that just adds a bit more flair to the whole thing. And then once I did that, I clicked Alt R to obviously randomize my velocity because that human feel, and then I clicked Alt S to give it a bit of strum. So with everything being said, this is what the melody sounds like. And there you guys have it. As for effects, we got ourselves a basic EQ, few of the highs, a lot of the lows taken out, and then just played around the frequencies I didn't like and liked. Of course, we got ourselves RC20. I used the Vinyl 1 preset off the top of my head. However, as you guys can see, I'm having an issue here. And then last but not least, of course, you want to have some Valhalla vintage verb, that reverb that gives it the ambience, the spacing, that stereo. And then onto the mixing track, I added some stereo separation just to give it a bit of a wider feel in the mix. Next up, we got ourselves Piano V2 with the preset American in it. It's the first preset within the actual plugin when you open it. And then all I did was take those notes from the previous melody and then just used it to create piano stabs. I'm a sucker for piano stabs and dark melodies, and Doughboy especially has those. So this is what it sounds like. But then, later on, within the verse section of the whole beat, I decided, you know what, let me give it a bit more flair, let me make it its own little thing and stand out. So I took the same piano stab, however, at the end of the 4 bar, I added an extra little 2 stabs, which give it a bit more like, you know, that oomph, that whole Doughboy vibe, because usually his choruses and his verses are a nice little blend of different melodies but same sounds, or even some different sounds. But that's why I did that, and this is what it sounds like. As for effects, I honestly just added an EQ, took off lows and a few highs, and nothing else on top of it. Then, on the actual mixing track, I stereo separated the stab quite wide in the mix, so it's not the harshest thing in the forefront, it's quite nice in the back, does what it needs to do, but just not all over in your face. Next up, we have ourselves an instance of Expand 2, and I'm using a preset called Tremolo Strings. I always butcher these pronunciations, but I know you got me in the comments. And it's from the Bang Strings, of course. As for what I did, just a nice little accent note on the root notes of F and C, and that's all it really is. So this is what it sounds like. And there you have it. As for effects, I added this like kind of telephone EQ effect, a lot of lows and highs cut off, and a few of them made stuck. Then I added this preset from Portal called Glacier, but I did keep the dry wet knob much closer to dry. It's just a bit more ear candy from the ear candy, which is the strings. So ear candy on top of ear candy gives you more ear candy. Then I added this nice little delay on the 8-0 preset. Of course, ping pong it, give it a nice little bit of effect in the ear, and it just makes it sound wider in the mix. And of course, you always gotta have yourself some reverb, especially with strings. I think reverb and strings always work really well, and it really helps to create that, again, that ambient dark vibe for Doughboy. Then next up, we got ourselves a lead from the Soft Leads bank in Expand 2 called Winemaker, except they spelled wine wrong. And then I came up with this kind of counter melody thing, following the root notes, of course, as you can see, making sure I make use of the semitone apart notes, and even same down here at the end of the 8 bar. But with all that being said, this is what the lead sounds like. And there you have it. As for effects, I took an EQ, cut off a lot of the lows, a few of the highs, added a standard fruity chorus, and then just took down the mix itself to like 30%. And then of course we got to have some more reverb. Why else would you not have reverb on your mix? You need to have reverb. And of course, last but not least, we got ourselves a dark synth from Omnisphere. And of course, it's the same old growling move bass because it's the go. As for the pattern, again, following the root notes, quite simple, cutting it off before the end of a 2-bar loop, just so it creates a bit of tension. And this is what the bass sounds like. There you have it. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to take you guys through the whole melody and you'll give it a listen now. However, as Doughboy and even I as a producer do, in his beats, you will tend to find that none of the melodies are all played together at the same time. And you guys will see that right now. So, without further ado, this is what the Doughboy melody sounds like. And there you have it, folks. That's what the whole melody sounds like together. And now, let's get on to the drums. First of all, we got ourselves, of course, the Lex Luger slap clap, or as you guys can see, the go-to clap. Came up with this repeating pattern for the every 2-bar, and it gives it just a nice little bounce, which is why I chose this specific pattern. And with all that being said, this is what the clap sounds like. And there you have it. Next up now, we got the hi-hat pattern. It looks kind of complex, but essentially very basic. As with all my hi-hat patterns, it's essentially a 4-bar loop. And if we look at the 4-bar loop itself, first of all, I listened to it as a 2-step hi-hat pattern, took out notes I wasn't a fan of, and kept notes that I liked within the thing to give it a different kind of bounce. Then I put the magnet onto quarter step, added a roll here, I meant half step. Then I added a roll here, then went onto a quarter step for the magnet, and then added a roll here, went back to half step, added another roll here without finishing it off, and then left the space, and then essentially continued that bounce with leaving the space. Took a few notes for changing pitch, and then another little roll. And I think this roll was by accident, but I think it just sounded nice if I remember correctly. So, copy and pasted it, and there's a full hi-hat pattern. So, this is what it sounds like. Hey, and that sounds pretty nice. Now, of course, next up, we got the kick pattern. And as you guys can see, very basic, repeats every 4-bar. And of course, you want to kick at Control A and use that scroller wheel to max those velocities. All caps, never forget. And with that being said, this is what the kick sounds like. And there you have it. Let me retake that. And there you have it. Now, last but not least, we got ourselves the 808 pattern. And as you guys can see, of course, I could click that Control A and max the velocities out because there's nothing wrong with doing so because it makes it sound harder. Like, why would you not want that on the Doughboy beat? Why would you not want that? And of course, I followed the root notes as you guys can see, and the pattern is the exact same. So, with all that being said, this is what the 808 sound like. And now it's time for you guys to hear all the drums together. So this is what Doeboys drum pattern will sound like. Even when you hear the drums without the melody on top, you already get a harsh punching vibe, that nice gritty trap sound, and now you've reached the end of the video. So of course, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and of course, take it easy. Peace.